Hi everyone, today we are going to go through another page in our workbook. This is page 139 in our workbook 3B on area and perimeter. This is the performance task for the chapter. Now, to do this activity, it requires us to use some square tiles. Now, some of us may have some tools at home that are square tiles that we can play with. Some of us don't. Okay, I have a few suggestions. Like here, I have a stack of post-its. Okay, and you can use these post-its to carry out this activity. And actually, the post-its can be used for another activity as well, which I will share with you on another video. But if you don't have post-its, so here I'm showing you what I have been doing for the past videos as well. Okay, I make copies of my workbook and print it out, and I make more than one copy. So if you see here, this is the question on my left hand side. On my right, you see I've made a few of them. Now, and let's take a look at the question first. It says here, use the square tiles to make the following figures. Now you can see these figures here is quite interesting, and if you take a closer observation, a closer look, and you observe closely, and you see, you'll probably be able to start identifying a pattern from it. Now if you see this pattern, some of you may be thinking ways to describe this pattern. Maybe, well, it looks like a stack of cards, a stack of tiles, looks like a staircase design. Okay, and that's the idea. You're starting to be able to recognize a pattern. So apart from a chapter on the area and perimeter, is a question that relates us to the idea of the use of patterns, finding patterns. Okay, so let's go back to the question. Each square tile has an area of 1 square unit. Record the area of the figures below. Now the 4 figures here, figure 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're supposed to fill in the blank. And thereafter, there's some more other activities and descriptions. So perhaps you go through the step by step first, okay? And I bring you to the attention to the cutouts here and my printout here. So, and you'll be able to see what exactly the figures mean. Okay, so square tiles. So I've printed the exact one and I cut them out. So here are the cutouts from the same figure, and the square tile meaning one of this. This is 1 square tile. Okay, this is 1 square tile. And if we have more of this, I can get this. Right. So 1 square tile has an area of 1 square unit. A quick revision to our understanding of what area and perimeter is, and understanding using units squares to measure area and perimeter of figures. 1 square unit here means that I'm going to label this one here. Okay, that's one side is 1 unit. Okay, and another side here is 1 unit. So all 4 sides of the square here is 1 unit. Okay, so this is what 1 unit square means. Okay, so 1 unit square. Oops. Okay, and when I'm talking about the area of this 1 unit square, okay, let's talk about figure 1. Figure 1 is made out of 1 square, and this 1 square is called a 1 unit square, meaning the side, the length and breadth of one side they're both 1 unit. So I want to find the area of figure 1, which simply means the area of the 1 square. That will be 1 unit multiplied by 1 unit that is the length of the square times the length of the square. That will be 1 unit. With that little 2 on top, they call this a 1 square unit. So that's what 1 square unit means. So over here, this is what 1 square unit looks like. Alright, so 1 square tile is 1 square, an area of 1 square unit. Now to fill in these blanks here, it's pretty simple. If I know that 1 square here stands for 1 square unit, to find the areas of these 4 figures simply needs me to count how many squares make up that figure. Now if you notice here, as with the previous questions, I cleared up the lines inside the shape so that you'll be able to see the figure exactly, what it meant by the figure, by looking at the outline of it. Now again, as we've discussed previously, when we're talking about area now, we're talking about the space taken up by the shape, the inside of the shape. So we are essentially talking about the space that's inside the shape. That's the area. Whereas perimeter is the outline of the shape. Okay, so over here I cleared out the lines inside so that you can see the figure clearly. This is figure 1, figure 2, figure 3 and figure 4. To be able to know what's the area of that figure, I simply can count the number of squares that's used to make up that figure. Okay, so I think by now most of us have already completed the table because it's a simple step of counting. So likewise, I can count. This is, remember, a very key important point, write down that units correctly. Okay, so this is 1 square unit. So figure number 2 is made up of 4 squares, so it's actually 4 square units. So if you're looking at this, I say area of figure 2 is made out of 4 squares, and each square stands for an area of 1 square unit, and that's why it stands for 4 square units. Okay, are you able to see that? And let me zoom that in. Okay, so I'm counting this number of squares. So similarly, I can count figure number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 units square units, I mean. So by now, I think we are nearing the completion of this chapter. So I believe that most of us are able to advance to this counting relatively quickly. My little markings here ensures that I don't miscount or I count the same square another time to ensure that I'm accurate. So 16 square units. But I think all of us should have minimal problems filling this in. Okay, so a quick revision of how that works. Counting of squares, unit squares to give you the area of the figure. The next step talks about rearranging the figures to make square figures. Now this is a very interesting step here. Okay, for some of us who may be more advanced, you'll probably be able to really see this very quickly and recognize the patterns that is here with the numbers. Now, in fact, when it comes to pattern finding, if you are able to have good number sense, that means you're able to tell the relationship of numbers very quickly, you are able to solve many problems. So in this case, the further steps here on rearranging the square tiles to make square figures, okay, will actually help you to recognize number patterns even better. So over here I'm going to demonstrate this part of the activity. Okay, so with my little cutsouts here that I've already cut them out nicely. You can see that it fits exactly. Okay, because I printed, like I said, I made copies. So likewise, if you would like to try, you can make copies too. Don't cut your workbook, though. I must emphasize, don't cut your workbook, but make a copy first. Make a copy, then you can cut it. Alright, so if you see, I'm going to take a snip of these shapes here to make the square tiles that's required for this activity. So I've cut up the figure 2. As you can see, I've cut up figure 2, which looks like this, right? Originally stacking up 3 on the squares at the bottom and 1 on top, and I can cut up this one as well. I'm going to put this on fast forward later. It helps if you print it on color paper. I don't have color paper at home though, however, so it might be not that obvious to see. I hope you can still see with my white paper here. I strongly encourage you to try out the hands-on activity. It's fun too. Okay, and the square tiles, you can actually use these square pieces of paper to create other drawings and shapes as well, and patterns as well. It's quite fun. Okay. So do print it on color paper if you want to be able to take a make it more, you're able to see the difference of the shapes a bit more, because it's white base. Okay, so I've cut this up. Okay, and this one as well. So the fun thing about visualization is that you are able to see these shapes move to form a new figure. You're really having to put it into action. That will be the exciting thing about the brain. Okay, if we have a flair in imagination and visual perception, that really gives you an advantage. Well, to develop that ability, it helps when you start with doing the hands-on activities, like really doing it. So your brain your hands and your brain get used to this action of moving the papers around, and actually stores this information in your brain, and very soon you will have this talent of seeing the shapes too. Okay, I'm missing a piece. Okay, so that's about it. I have made up the pattern. Okay, there's an extra piece here. Very careful. Make sure you're not sitting beside a strong blasting fan and then your paper start flying around. Am I missing a piece? I'm sure the piece will come out later. Okay. Oh yes, it's on the scissors. Okay, sounds something like that. Okay, not the perfect arrangement, but you get the idea. And we are going to rearrange it anyway. So this is the fun bit about pentagrams too. You must be able to compose new shapes. Okay, so here says, give you an example. Rearrange figure number 2. So figure 1 is here. Rearrange figure number 2 to make a new shape that's a square. Yep. Any issues with that? Quite cool. So the thing about this is that you are able to see that, okay, now I have a new square that's a bigger square that is 2 units by a 2 units square. Okay, can you see that? That's a 2 units by 2 units square. I take the third figure, I take out the squares, and let's try to see if I can rearrange it to form a new shape, or in other words, a bigger square. You see that? I'll zoom that in a little bigger later so you can take a closer look. So I rearranged the unit squares, and here I get a bigger square. Okay, I'm zooming that back a little bit. Okay, and over here, what can you guess? Can I make a square out of this? And what do you think is the length of the side of the square? And there you go. I have a new figure 4 and a new figure 3 as well. I get a 4 unit by 4 unit square. You see that? Yes, so I can get a figure 1 became a 1 unit by 1 unit square. Figure 2 2 units by 2 units square. Figure 2. Figure 3 3 units by 3 units square. And then the last one here, figure number 4. For 4 units by 4 units square. You see that? And the interesting thing you now realize is that I'm starting to have a pattern. So even though I just now mentioned this is the last shape here on the worksheet, the fact that because you recognize a pattern can go never ending. It can go up to figure number 100 or figure number 150, figure 160, and on, because that's the pattern you are trying to identify now, and the pattern can repeat continuously. So once you can recognize this, you get squares, new shapes here. You come back to the question here, and you realize that, hey, over here, after rearrangement, I actually able to find a pattern. Now this pattern has a second name to it. It's called square numbers. So I should get 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, and then 4 times 4. And what do you think is the next one? Yes, you got that right. So if you look at the bottom of the paper, the 2 questions, what do you notice about the areas and sides of the squares or figures? They are made out of square numbers. Yes, and you kind of realize that the length of a side of a square increases by a unit 1 at each time. So if you are going to make figure 5, how many square tiles will you need based on the pattern you see in the table below? Yes, I think most of us got that already. It's a 5 times 5, that's 25 squares you need. And the area of that square, that figure number 5, figure 5 here, that area is likely to be 25 square units. It's 5 times 5, right? And if I'm going to ask you, what about figure number 100? What do you think it will be? Yes, you got that right. 100 times 100, right? Okay, so that is this question. Let me zoom it up so you can see the whole of the paper. Okay, this is page 139. Now, finally, I'll just try to tell you again, in recognizing patterns, if you have strong number sense, that helps with being familiar with your addition, subtraction, multiplication and division tables, and good concepts of, say, area and perimeter over here, you are able to solve many questions. And always persevere. Thank you.